All right. What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I am one of your co-hosts for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V.
And I'm your other co-host for today, Kodey Stoffer, covering my former position here.
Yeah, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking receivers. We're continuing, obviously, our top fives list for the class of 2022 here in Colorado, the Box State. And, there's a good number of receivers here. We have a lot of honorable mentions. That's kind of how it always goes with receivers, though. Just like last year, there's a lot of guys that didn't make our list because there's a lot of receivers in the state. And we will do a film breakdown at a different time. And so there you go. And then, just throwing this out there at the beginning of this episode, if you do make our top five list, consider it an invite to come onto the show and, interview with us. Just go ahead and send us a DM and we could figure out a time and get that set up because we'd love to talk to you and hash it out. Let yourself, allow yourself to defend yourself if you feel like it needs to happen and whatnot, and we'll compromise and go from there. So there you go. But let's go ahead and kick this thing off at number 5. Our number 5 receiver in the class of 2022 in Colorado is Blake Haggerty. He is a 6 foot 185 pound athlete, actually, from Castleview High School. I believe he's a 3-star athlete, right, Kodey? According to 24/7?
Yes, he is. He's a 3-star athlete, and I think his trainer over at 6-0 Academy helped him obtain that, as he does with all of his players. So shout out to 6-0 for always looking out.
Yeah, so there you go. Plays receiver, DB. I'm going to go ahead and talk about his stats. His stats on the year. And so receiving wise, he had 37 receptions for 473 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns. And then as a runner, he did get about 22 carries for a solid 108 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. And then, like I said, he was on defense as well. And so pretty much playing there full time. I want to say he was over 40 plus total tackles on the season. Snagged a couple of turnovers here and there, but we're talking offense here, so we'll leave that out for now. But let me go ahead and talk about the strengths here / some of the reasons why Haggerty is on this list and how he made it here. So number 1, I think the thing that really separates him from a lot of receivers in the state is that he just has excellent body control that allows him to adjust to tough thrown balls and get inbounds as well. There's a lot of catches he makes where, he's just trying to snag the ball and then get a foot in bounds, and it looks quite impossible, not going to lie, but he twists around and, does his thing and makes it happen because honestly, I'm just going to be real. The quarterback for Castleview, he's pretty hot and cold sometimes. And so Haggerty really helped him out here, making some of these sideline snags. And that's kind of a staple of his game, those sideline snags, I would say, just getting those catches on the edges and getting a foot in bounds in real tough situations. And you see him do that a lot, whether it's third down, whether it's end zone, whatever. He goes ahead and makes that happen and finds a way to come down with the ball. And so there you go. The second thing I like personally is that I like his ability after the catch. You could break a lot of tackles, at 6 foot, 185. He's a pretty stout receiver. He has a good agility, a good center of gravity. And so he could definitely break a couple of tackles physically and, give you a little bit more after the catch, which is what you always love to have out of a receiver. Have a receiver that can do a little bit more for your quarterback after the catch. So there you go. Excuse me. And then speaking of his frame one more time, like I said, 6 foot 185. That's a pretty solid frame there for not just D1, but for the next level in general. And honestly, Loki, he could get up there as well with the best of them. And honestly, there are a lot of catches that he makes that are contested, and he just does a very good job securing the ball through physicality, through contact, and you see that quite a bit. If a quarterback could just get it in there, make it a catchable ball, Haggerty could go ahead and make a play on that. And so those are the things I really like about him. Before I pass it on to you, Kodey, and ask you some things that you like about Blake Haggerty, I just want to talk about some of his notable games here. And so the first one here, 38-21 dub over Fairview. He had 3 catches, 48 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And then against excuse me. And then against Rock Canyon. Okay. And then against Rock Canyon, I believe this game was kind of later in the year. They lost 21-14, but he had a real nice game. 8 receptions, 97 receiving yards, putting in a lot of work there, statistically making it happen. And so there you go. That's Blake Haggerty. That's why he's on this list. I think Haggerty just has a lot of raw athletic ability that can translate to the next level, in terms of making catches and breaking tackles and all of that. So there you go. There, Kodey, is there anything else that you want to add on before you talk about areas of improvement?
Yeah, I'm just going to have to echo some things that you said about Blake. Obviously, the first thing that jumps off the film is just he is a contortionist by that sideline, and he just has amazing body control for those acrobatic catches, and his ability to kind of not only reestablish his feet in bounds for those boundary catches, but he makes acrobatic catches in the middle of the field, and when he comes back on the ground, he hits the ground running, really, and it just shows incredible, like I said, body control and just the ability to adjust on the fly to the ball and make some spectacular catches. If there is a spectacular catch rating, like in Madden for Blake Haggerty, it's definitely, in that mid to high 80s range. He makes some great catches. He shows just great balance, I'd also say, in order to pull off some of these catches. So I'll just echo that sentiment. And I think he has a really good understanding for how to play receiver because he is such a good defensive back who, can play pretty good bump and run. I think that allows him to excel as a receiver as well. But without going too much further down the strengths, Simon, you mind if I talk about some areas of improvement for Haggerty here?
Yeah, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, so, I've seen him live twice, and one of those games was against Douglas County, right, which that was the first time Douglas County beat Castleview in 5 years or something crazy. They had a great squad out there at Douglas County this year, and the other was against Pomona in the opening round of the 5A playoffs, and there's one thing that stuck out to me both times, and that was his inability to create separation. His route tree just doesn't have a lot of creativity. There's not a lot of moves that he has to create more separation, and I just think that he's way too athletic, and he shows way too good of footwork in general for his lack of separation to be such a glaring issue, and it's definitely something that needs to be coached up. And while that's not a huge list of weaknesses, that is a really bad weakness to have as a wide receiver, is not being able to create separation, only being granted the separation that you're initially given. And sometimes he even squanders that by just running directly into a DB rather than throwing in a head nod, throwing in some choppy footwork, throwing some shoulder fakes, some hip twists, he's just very uncreative in his route tree and in his route running, really. And then the route tree that he ran to, this is more of a scheme thing, but it wasn't a very expansive route tree, in my opinion. Simon, do you have anything else to add on before I kind of talk about some looks that he's getting on the next level?
No, not too much here. I think for me, the lack of separation against Pomona was kind of a big deal. I mean, they obviously have great athletes over there, so it's not like it's nobody. But I mean, I agree. If he could be a little bit more crafty, work on his route running specifically, some moves that he could subtly put on, because there are some receivers here that have very good route running, and it allows them to get open because of the subtle things that they do. Then he could be a next level type of guy easily. And I don't think it takes that much work. I mean, you're gonna have to commit time to it, obviously, but it's not something that's like a extremely bad habit that's gonna take years and years and years to figure out. So there you go. But yeah, go ahead and talk about his looks, his outlook here.
Yeah, so, kind of going a little bit in order, as at least as much as I can see from his Twitter. He was wished some, he has been given some love from USD here, and, like, I wouldn't say has an offer from there, but at least some interest. Then, he also went out to an Air Force game as well, and he's been to a CU game or two. And then also, I believe that he has an official offer from Drake University as well. But yeah, the USD, they said, good luck in the playoffs. So, that's a pretty good look to be having. And, he's a great athlete who warrants these looks. If he's not a top 5 wide receiver, he's also somebody that, as a program, you have some flexibility with, just because he is a very solid defensive back as well. And I think, lastly, he has a preferred walk-on to the University of Colorado. Simon, I'll pass it right back to you to give your quick thoughts on these and whether Blake should pursue any of these, or if another route is something you have in mind for the 3-star athlete here.
Yeah, no, for sure. So most of them are D2 offers, at least from what I hear. And honestly, I think it's up to him, because you could have a very successful career and college experience on the D2 level. I think it's important to note here that he does have a 4.1 GPA, which is really good. And so he's pretty much a lock into a lot of different colleges, most colleges really. And he will be able to get that top financial aid package for the most part, which is going to be huge. And so if there's anything that his D2 offer doesn't cover, well, then there you go. You have that financial aid from your grades and whatnot, assuming he maintains that for his senior year. And that's pretty huge, because potentially that could cover pretty much all of his college, if not near all of his college for the most part here. And so that's pretty big. If he wants to go to the D2 level, that'll work out as well. He could be a star potentially on this D2 level if he develops more and, does his thing over there. I mean, honestly, I think he's somebody that could, he's just maybe a year or two away from being one of the top receivers, in D2 college football, potentially. I think he has that potential in him. And so if that's the route he wants to go, that's fine. If he wants to try that preferred walk-on at CU, that's great. Obviously CU is always, they're always bringing in Colorado guys, which is great and whatnot, but just know it will be a crowded, receiver room for the most part. And so you got to do a lot of these little things that we talked about here to stand out. The more things you could do to stand out, the better, obviously. And then, like I said, he still has that 4.1. And so maybe a lot of his college can be paid for, and maybe him or his family could help out with that as well until he is put on offer. So those are kind of the two options. He can go JUCO. I think he could do well there. But low-key, if you go D2, do your time there. And if you want to transfer out for your last year to a D1, that works too. But, do what financially makes sense and, what you're really vibing with too, because there are some really, fantastic D2 college campuses and I guess just lifestyles in general that I feel like a lot of college kids could rock with too. And so that's important to keep in mind. So, yeah. But, Kodey, what do you think here? I think Haggerty has a lot of potential, but I agree kind of with the D2 offers here for now.
Yeah, so, I think these offers are appropriate because he is a raw prospect. But, there's something about, a little bit of coaching could go a long way. And if he just gets the right direction, or even, a few more targets, I think that we'll see a whole nother Blake Haggerty, one that's more capable and one that has more opportunities to make plays without having to make all these crazy catches that he had to make on the high school level because of, just where the ball was and how the targets win. But, I think that a PWO to CU is a good thing to have. And, like you said, with a 4.1 GPA, he can definitely get into CU and, probably get a pretty decent academic scholarship and then enjoy a ride on their squad and, maybe look to contribute on their special teams here in a couple years. Or he could go D2, maybe contribute as a first-year guy just because of his athleticism on that level. But, I think either way, it works out. He could even go JUCO, honestly, if he wants to try and get some more D1 looks, because some JUCO coaching and developing that route tree and just those moves and stuff like that, as well as just getting the looks and the targets if he goes to a pass-heavy team, could be pretty beneficial and help him get some better offers, honestly, if he wants to go that way and maybe rack up a couple more D1 looks. But other than that, I agree with, your outlook on it. I think that he has a lot of opportunities ahead of him. Definitely needs a bit more development before becoming a for sure D1 guy. But I think that he's capable of it and just needs some better looks on the college level and more targets. So he could go into JUCO for 2 years and try and get more D1 looks, or he could try and earn a scholarship at CU. I mean, he already has potential, like you said, for academic stuff. On the D2 level, probably some full rides are in question for him. So it's really just up to him at that point. But I agree with where the level he's at now, and I also see lots of potential for growth. But
yeah, I mean, do what you're comfortable with. Yeah, that's all I gotta say there. Personally, I know if all of my college is paid for and I'm just chilling, I mean, outside of college, obviously you gotta do that, and your commitment to your team. That's a lot of things that are off your plate. Not a lot of. Honestly, just not a lot of people our age get to experience that. And, you got to keep that in mind as well. Check that privilege and be appreciative of that, But like I said, don't be afraid to bet on yourself either, like Kodey said as well. So, yeah, but that'll basically wrap up this one. So Blake Haggerty out of Castleview at number 5 on our list. Number 4 will be coming up next year.
Hey, y'all, welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I am one of your co-hosts for today, Kodey Stauffer, talking about the number 4 receiver of the class of 2022. In last segment, we talk about Blake Haggerty out of Castleview. This segment, we are staying at the 5A level and talking about the Cherokee Trail slot receiver, Jack Pierce, 5'8", 170 pounds, 4.46 laser speed, making him our fastest receiver on this list. Kind of spoiler alert, kind of not. And a 3.512 GPA. So I'm just going to jump right into it here and talk about what made Jack Pierce so electric this year. He was a dynamic playmaker for this Cherokee Trail team. And, I think that part of it starts with just his shiftiness. He has great footwork to shake defenders before and after the catch and just create space in a lot of creative ways. He's kind of your prototypical NFL style slot receiver, where he just exploits these mismatches at times against linebackers, but also just has incredible footwork and shiftiness to create room against slot corners, because he does play in the Centennial League, and the Centennial League is one of the few leagues in Colorado, I'd say, who can boast, enough talent and athleticism to actually have a nickel cornerback as a part of their rotation. And he still succeeded even against those looks, And he does this, like I said, through the footwork, but also he has head nods and shakes on routes to lose defenders that work pretty well, especially because he does a great job of, moving his head with his routes in general anyway. So it's like a believable head fake or nod because he does typically do that. And, I think that he has solid balance, and he's kind of hard to take down for 5'8", 170 pounds. That's a pretty stout size, I'd say, at 5'8". He's like compact, but, his speed and acceleration and just his ability to drive his legs as well as, that lower center of gravity, he bounces off of defenders sometimes. If they just try and go for one of those like shoulder pad hits, he might just bounce off and then take it to the house on you. So, that's obviously really impressive. And yeah, he has, I talked about it, 4.46 speed. This is, something that's very evident when you're watching the film. I think that, he just has that next gear that a lot of wide receivers in Colorado or even running backs kind of don't have. And it's just very evident on the film. And so, Simon, you actually mind if I talk about some of his statistics here before passing it to you for some strengths?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
So he was a touchdown machine this past year. He's kind of used as a gadget player a little bit, so he also has some rushes. But, in this season, he had 10 carries for 105 yards and 1 score. And then, he had over 100 receptions for 1,190 yards and 14 touchdowns. Like I said, once he catches the ball in space, he's super hard to catch up to. Almost no one catches him from behind. And, he's been able to create separation against, like I said, some really good cornerbacks. There's even one play in his highlight reel where he creates some separation against Caden Rulo, which, if you're familiar, was our number 1 cornerback. I mean, Jack Pierce didn't score. Let's not get anything twisted. But, to still create space against the best cornerback in the senior class of Colorado is something that is impressive in and of itself. So, he just finds ways to get into the end zone and finds ways to, shake defenders no matter what he's up to. So, just a really good athlete overall out of Cherokee Trail. Simon, you want to talk about some more strengths and then maybe some areas of improvement for the slot receiver out of Cherokee Trail?
Yeah, for sure. So, honestly, honestly agree with everything you had to say here. He's a fast dude who is going to be more of a gadget guy probably on the next level if he does go D1 and whatnot. So there you go there. But let me talk about some of his games here, some of his notable games throughout the season, because he had some good ones. I'm going to kind of start in reverse order, though, and talk about his playoff game against Fossil Ridge, the first one. They won that one 41-29, and he was big in that one, snagging 13 receptions for 223 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns, absolutely tearing them up. Against Grandview, he actually had 10 receptions, 90 receiving yards. He had a receiving touchdown. I don't know. It wasn't on Caden Rulo, was it? But
it was on number 2.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so there you go. But, still did a solid job. That's a good secondary in general. Then against Arapahoe, they beat them they lost 42-24, my bad. They lost to them, but he had 16 receptions, 143 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. Obviously, he could catch the ball. I mean, physicality is probably not the biggest concern here as far as catching it, because you do see these double-digit receptions here against some pretty physical, teams in the state of Colorado. So there you go there. But let me go ahead and talk about some areas of improvement / more so concerns than anything. Like, it's really not too much that he could really control, I guess. And so number 1 is probably a small frame, 5'8", 170. I mean, it's just not the greatest, and, it is what it is. But it definitely affects his versatility. Like, he's probably not the guy to throw out there and, just rely on him to go get a great block. I don't think that's really his game right there. Like, he's a willing blocker, but I don't know how great of a matchup that is. So, there you go there. And then obviously, I mean, if you're in the red zone, you can't go. I mean, you need to have him out there with more than like 1 or 2 other receivers for sure. Like if it's 4 wide, that's where he's gonna succeed for sure. But like if it's like kind of a shorter situation in the red zone and whatnot, I mean, he's only 5'8", 170. He's not gonna moss anybody to get in. You're gonna have to scheme him in and either get him on a drag or something. Excuse me. But you're gonna have to scheme him in to the red zone if you're that close and whatnot. Just because I don't know. And then like I said, he can make contested catches, but if he's doubled, that's probably a wrap if it's in the end zone. So, like I said, just in general, because of his frame, it just limits where he can be used and his versatility. I mean, he can be used a lot of different other ways and contribute a lot to, to teams when on the next level because of his speed and just his pure athletic ability. But it's not going to be in probably some key, like if you need a 4th and 1 or a 4th and short or like a goal line sitch, like I don't know if you throw him in there outside of just having him in there just so that defenses respect the fold in your offense that is Jack Pierce. So there you go. And then lastly, I mean, played a lot of slot receiver, pretty much is just a slot receiver. Obviously not a work as an outside receiver. And, that's definitely a little bit of a problem. And you know what? I'm going to allow Kodey to talk about that, that and some other things that are maybe some areas of improvement for Jack Pierce here before we talk outlook.
Yeah, so how if you listened to our list last year, you know how hard it is to make this list as a slot receiver. So it's special that he even made it on here because of his speed and athleticism. But first off, he just does not run as many routes as you would want out of your slot guy. Like, I think that, maybe it's scheme, but, there's a lot of motion kind of routes that he has, which is cool and all. But, like, I want to see more in between the hashes, shiftiness work, finding the open space in the field, a lot more spot routes, option routes where he makes a read. We didn't get to see him really improvise too much with the quarterback in this system or, at Cherokee Trail. So I don't know how that's going to look because those are some things that you want out of your slot receivers. And they should be probably they should be really, really good route runners if they are exclusively slot receivers. And I don't know if that necessarily applies to Jack Pierce. Not to mention that once you put him outside, he has like maybe 1 or 2 plays on the outside in like his entire film. And they're basically a hitch route and a go route, which is not, it doesn't give you a lot of versatility and it doesn't fool people what he's going to do. Like he's going to run go routes. He's going to run, the occasional post out of the slot and try and, beat cover 2 looks. And he's going to run a lot of out routes. So you kind of are limited by what you can do with him. Simon alluded to that a little bit, especially in like certain game situations. There's just times where he won't be on the field. I also want to note that he doesn't have the strongest hands on this list. There are times on his film where it cuts out when he starts to get hit. And it's like, okay, well, my hunch is telling me that you dropped that ball. Otherwise, you would show you celebrating the touchdown like you did the other 14 times on the film. So, he has that. And, occasionally whenever he gets to the sideline, cornerbacks have been shown to punch the ball out as well. So ball security might be an issue for him, which is not a great thing when you're 5'8" heading into, potentially the Division I level where you're going to get rocked by some 230-pound, like 3-star linebacker out of Texas who has been waiting his entire life for you to run a slant at him. Unfortunately, you have to make those catches. Like that's what's expected of you at the receiver position, and that is a concern I have here for Jack Pierce. And then I also think that, just his catching traffic in general is really inconsistent because you have some plays where he's like hyper focused and he makes a great catch, with like 3 bodies around him, which is, that's a strength. But then other times, you'll get like there'll be a safety kind of behind him, and a cornerback trailing him, and then he kind of bobbles it a little bit and catches it with his body more. And so you want to catch with your hands every single time. Hands is a very bad weakness to have as a wide receiver. And if he wasn't such a crazy athlete, it would be hard to put him on this list. But he is a crazy athlete, and he is getting some collegiate looks because of said athleticism and, big play capabilities. Simon, you mind if I kind of dive into it a little bit?
Yeah, go for it. Also, by the way, this is being recorded on November 23rd. So that's those are the offers we're looking at. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, go for it.
And I'm going to talk about some visits too. He did have a game day visit at West Texas A&M, which is a place that offered, our college analyst Jesse Booten a preferred walk-on and a chance to potentially earn a scholarship there. They like their slot receivers. They have a system that is conducive to said receiver, and so that might be a good fit depending on what the offer is that he does get. And then, he had another visit for School of Mines, and he really liked the atmosphere there and gave a shout out to, Mines there. He has an offer. It was his first official offer to Adams State University. That is a D2 down in Alamosa in Colorado. And then he also just received an offer from Simon and I's alma mater, University of Northern Colorado. And yeah, that's his first and only D1 offer, like Simon said, as of November 23rd. Simon, I'm going to pass it to you for your raw reaction to some of these offers that, it's kind of an interesting field of offers that he's looking at, and one that kind of gets you thinking.
I'm trying to remember, is West Texas A&M, are they FCS or D2? I can never remember with them, even though I have friends who played for them. Do you know?
I'm pretty sure that they're a Division One. No, they're D2. They're D2. They're in the Lone Star Conference.
Okay.
No, but they have a really explosive offense. That's why it's easy to confuse. And I'm pretty sure that they've sent some guys to the NFL, even out of D2.
They have. There's been some last chance you guys that have went there as well. So, yeah. And then, go to the NFL. So that's interesting. I mean, I think, honestly, it depends what Jack Pierce wants. I think with UNC offering, it's very possible that a lot more D1s could potentially offer here soon. And so he has some time. When this is coming out, it might be a whole month from when we're recording this. So a lot could happen, for sure. But obviously, you have a great opportunity at UNC. I mean, I like that they're helping out Colorado talent and offering some of these kids finally. I think Jack Pierce is definitely deserving of that for sure. Don't get it twisted. I mean, he's a great athlete. He's somebody that could add another fold into the offense that UNC has. That's been a little, I don't want to offend our guys over there, because I know we both, more players over there that are still on the team right now. But, they don't have the most amount of speed. We'll just say that. I have a lot of 6'3", 6'4" receivers, not a whole ton of burners out there. And so that would be a real big steal for UNC for sure there. But obviously I do think because of his athleticism, and with the right coaching staff, he could be a very, very valuable guy on a lot of D1 teams, probably FCS teams. Low-key, I think Eastern Washington would be a team that could, be a pretty good fit. I think they're similarly built like UNC, except they do it better, obviously, and they have way better defense. But I think Jack Pierce would really help them out and, add a little bit more speed to that offense over there. And help them out. I could see a lot of actually Big Sky teams offering Jack Pierce here once the FCS playoffs are over, because I know that bracket, at least at this time, was just set this last weekend, and there are like 5 or 6 Big Sky teams that made it in, which is pretty interesting. And then I want to say two of them have first round buys too. And so when things calm down, a little bit more there. And then obviously with, FBS teams as well, if there is some interest there. But I think he's more of an FCS guy. But when things calm down, I think you could see some Big Sky teams, take a look at him and be like, hey, is this somebody that we could steal from UNC? Because as it stands right now, let's just be real, and I know there are some UNC coaches that listen to this, that follow us on Twitter, whatever, and we appreciate that. But Northern Colorado isn't exactly the greatest Big Sky location if you're a recruit. And if you have multiple offers from Big Sky teams, that's just the reality of it. If they're your only D1 offer, then obviously they look pretty good. But, Montana offers, Montana State, Eastern Washington, Weber, Portland State, I want to say, yep. Cal Poly, like some of those like California teams, the competition gets pretty stiff as far as Big Sky goes. And so I think he could definitely be a Big Sky type of player and contribute to a championship run on a lot of these teams that are currently making their championship run right now. So, yeah. But, Kodey, what do you think?
I think that, UNC is graduating a lot of senior or, graduate class level receivers this year and next year. And there's going to be a pretty big void that needs to be filled. And Jack Pierce offers you at least a little bit of comfort in that transition period. And, it could be a very exciting offense here in a couple of years. I mean, they did offer running back Bryce Vaz. They've also offered Jack Pierce here. You have some guys that are versatile kind of gadget guys, and you can get a really crazy offense going just with those two as the foundation of it, honestly. And then, they offer a former number one quarterback out of the class of 21 in Luke McAllister. You might be brewing up a functional offense, and one that's consistent too, and one that you'll get the same level of production out of every week. So, I think UNC is obviously hoping to, kind of sneak this one in here. But Jack Pierce, definitely a FCS level guy in general. But
what do you think about our Big Sky rivals swooping in and potentially taking him from UNC just because they can?
Well, it makes me sad.
Well, okay. Do you think they do it? If you're at Montana State, do you look at Jack Pierce and you're like, you know what? Just to hurt UNC, I'm going to go ahead and get this guy.
Here's the thing, right? I don't think Big Sky teams are really threatened by UNC as it stands right now after this last season too. And so I don't know if they do that just to kneecap UNC. I mean, they could, but I think that UNC does have an advantage recruiting Jack Pierce here because, he's being recruited by Ed McCaffrey. And there's something special about being a Colorado kid growing up watching Ed McCaffrey, especially as a wide receiver, and then, getting a chance to play for him on the collegiate level. That's kind of special. It really is. And so, obviously there is chances and opportunities for these other Big Sky schools to swoop in on Jack Pierce here. But at the bare minimum, you can say, oh, it was Ed McCaffrey's first year. They have excuses at the time right now. And, being recruited by Ed McCaffrey is like Colorado wide receivers' dream come true in some sense. So, they have that advantage for sure going for them in this recruiting, regardless of Greeley not being the most desirable place to live in the Big Sky.
Well, yes, but I also meant, because how many low 4-4 guys are you going to have on your team if you're these other Big Sky teams?
Well, they're not coming from their own states unless you're in Washington.
Yeah, or Cali. So that's where I'm coming from. They're not just going to get him, just to, hurt UNC. They would get him so that, they could have a great player on their team and stack their team a little bit more instead of UNC just because they can. Is what I meant by that.
Yeah, he's an asset. I'll agree that he's an asset and a must-have on your roster.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. We'll see. I'm sure a lot has changed. I'm sure a lot has changed by the time this episode comes out. So there you go. But if that is basically all we got to say, there you go. Jack Pierce, number 4 on our list from Cherokee Trail High School. The slot receiver, probably the only slot receiver really on this list. So there you go there. But we're going to go ahead and take a break here before we talk about our number 3 guy on this list coming up next.
It is one of your co-hosts, Kodey Stoffer here, back on your favorite scouting center for Colorado football, Playmakers Corner, and we are doing our top 5 senior receivers of the class of 2022. And here at number 3, at the midway point, we have someone right from my backyard here in Nick Stone, the Mountain Vista receiver, weighing in at 180 pounds, standing at 6'1", and being quite the intelligent guy here with a 4.1 GPA and a 33 ACT. So, hey, recruits, this guy's got some brains. But on top of that, he is a... What'd you say?
I think you meant recruiters, not other recruits.
Oh, yeah, recruiters. This guy's got brains, but he's also got some skills. He is a run-after-catch scoring threat at any point on the field. He just has another gear that, he has an acceleration that is just not expected out of someone who's at 6'1", 180 pounds. He moves like a gazelle through defenses, and he finds ways into the end zone. And he's punctured some of the best defenses in the state, really. I mean, he got on my radar when Mason Austin and I went to the Arapahoe versus Mountain Vista game. And Arapahoe only lost 3 times this year. And one of those losses was to these Mountain Vista Eagles here. And Nick Stone specifically, who was torching this secondary, whether it was back shoulder catches, back of the end zone toe taps, or cross field routes where he cuts it back inside and makes a couple guys miss and finds the end zone. And I think that, that display with just that versatility of ways that he can make plays was as good of a selling point as any for liking Nick Stone here and, him ending up on this list. As I mentioned, one of his touchdowns was a toe tapper in the back of the end zone. He has great feet and positioning, and he doesn't just try and get one foot in. He tries to get both feet in just to not leave any room for doubt on, if it's a catch or not. So you love just like the ability there and the athleticism to do something like that. And, on top of that, he's super athletic and he catches with his hands very well. He has very strong hands and is through and through a true receiver who doesn't really rely on his body because, he did have to make some kind of crazy catches this year. I think that's partially because, over at Mountain Vista, they were running a 2-quarterback system. So chemistry, especially early on in the season, was kind of difficult to establish when you had a senior and a freshman throwing the football. But Nick Stone still found a way to ball out. I'll let Simon allude to the rest of the stats here in a minute. But, he has just, on top of that athleticism, he runs routes from both the inside and the outside. And he shows great field awareness and manipulation, He's able to find the open grass whenever he goes to the middle of the field on some routes that require, reading the open part of the defense on spot routes. He definitely runs option routes. And, I think another thing that's really impressive is he can line up on the tight side of the field as the outside receiver, run an out route, and still have room to catch the ball and get upfield and make a move as well. So, just showing that control and that speed and accelerate, that combination of just overall awareness of what he is as an athlete and what he brings to the football field is really impressive and mature for a high school football athlete. I was very impressed seeing him live, and even more so impressed watching his film, and just a couple other things that he does really well that, I like is, on top of running routes from inside and outside, he has a few different moves to get off the press, whether he does like a little head shake inside or a stutter step or a slow start and then quick burst of acceleration. He just has ways to get off of the press and, create some separation, for these Mountain Vista quarterbacks and to find the end zone, which he did very often this season. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Simon for, just some things that Simon noticed about Nick Stone's film, as well as some of his stats this year from, a really impressive receiver just right here in Highlands Ranch. What do you know?
Yeah. So Nick Stone, honestly, just in general, his film just pops out. It just pops out, like you look at it and it's like, dang, there's a lot of things that just kind of stand out to you. He's an explosive athlete. He has very good hands. He could go up there and, beat out some defenders, multiple defenders for the football. You see that happen quite a bit. But the thing I like most is honestly probably his stats, because like you said, Kodey, for the majority of this season, Mountain Vista did run more of a 2-quarterback kind of system, with their better quarterback, who would ultimately be the full-time starter, Austin Majewski, being a freshman. And so he did a lot to help out both of these quarterbacks, and, especially this young one in Austin as well. And so on this season, he had 59 receptions, 850 receiving yards, 10 receiving touchdowns. I'm going to go ahead and talk about his notable games here. The first one is the game that Kodey was at against Arapahoe, where Mountain Vista did win 27-17. In that game, he had 7 receptions, 147 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. And, Arapahoe, I know they're a notable game for Jack Pierce here as well. But they don't have bad athletes or like a horrible defense either. So for him to do that, that's pretty big. Against Castleview, they lost this one by 42-41, but he had 9 receptions, 156 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And then against the Legacy, obviously they have I think it's the number 3 corner in the state, at least that's what we ranked, in Braden Keith, who, I don't know. I don't know if he was on Nick Stone or not, but Stone went off and they won this one 42-17. But he had 8 receptions, 120 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. And so he's had some pretty notable games here. He has had some signature games here that have kind of, helped out his stock a lot, obviously, and statistically, considering the situation he was in, it's pretty good. If you imagine him with a full-time starter, with a quarterback that they stuck with since the beginning of the season, there's definitely potential for these stats to be much better than this, which is pretty solid, as is at 850 receiving yards and 10 receiving touchdowns. But Kodey, do you mind if I go ahead and talk about areas of improvements here?
Send it.
All right, so I don't have too many, to be completely honest with you. I have these 2 main ones that I see as kind of like the thing holding him back from being either 1 or 2, and even then there's still a lot there. But I think he could probably be a little bit more physical against the press. He has a lot of finesse moves at the line, which is fine, but I'd like to continue to see him develop that bag. He's not like a small receiver. He's 6'1", 180. There's not going to be a whole ton of corners outside of like maybe the D1 FBS level that's going to be at that size. And so, I would expect him to dominate physically a little bit more at the line of scrimmage. I like that he has finesse moves for sure, but he could definitely develop that bag there. And then the other thing here is that he's just not like, I guess, the shiftiest player. After the catch, he could do his thing and all that, obviously, with his top end speed, with some of that strength there as well. But he could definitely work on his shiftiness. So that's just working on lateral quickness, agility. I think there is potential there. Like, it's not like it's horrible, but I think it could definitely be developed a little bit more to make him a lot more lethal here. Kodey, is there anything else you want to add on before we talk outlook?
I mean, I got to agree that, his run after catch comes mostly from his gear of speed and not from his shiftiness. So he could definitely work on that. And then I also wish he could create more separation, with a little bit of physicality in press. A lot of his different press releases are super finesse. But I mean, bro, you're 6'1", 180. Push the cornerback. Like, get off the line and, don't be afraid to use your hands. And, if they're going to put their hands on you, put your hands right back on them and give them a good shove. I mean, gosh, the wide receiver has a really bad rep of being, this kind of finesse, soft position. But when you're 6'1", 180, like, you could be a dog and just knock somebody over and get a good release on him. Because if they're going to put their hands on you within that 5 yards, I mean, almost anything goes. And so you get a good shove, then you'll get some really free touchdowns. And I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing to have. And then lastly, I think that his hands help him while I said his hands are a strength, they do help him compensate for some bad positioning at times. But I'm going to talk about some of his offers now. I'm just going to jump right into it here. He has an offer to Colorado School of Mines. And, obviously that is a very prestigious school to get an offer from. And, we're excited for him there. And then, I just want to note that he did go to a Princeton football camp earlier this year. I believe it was in July. And he also went to a Yale football camp this year, also in July. So, when you have a 33 ACT and a 4.1 GPA, you start getting looks from some of these Ivy League schools. And the fact that you're a really good football player doesn't hurt either. And I really like the prospect of Nick Stone going Division I in the Ivy League. I think that's his best chance. And, that's a huge accomplishment in and of itself. We've covered some Ivy League athletes on this show, with Q Jones, our number one running back at 21, and Jadaris Carr, who, he played in the spring. Otherwise, he probably would have been on our top 5. And they just duked it out over the Ivy League title, So there's plenty of talent of football at those Ivy League schools. And, Nick Stone's got both the brains and the brawn to compete at that level. Simon, what do you think of the offers that he had, or the offer he has so far to Mines, and the prospect of him being an Ivy League football player?
Well, it's obvious he's a smart guy. With the GPA and with the ACT score, that is near perfect ACT score. I want to say it's either 35, 36 in that range.
That's 36, perfect. I think, is perfect.
Yeah, so there you go.
I know I didn't score a 33.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't either, but also I wasn't trying. So there you go. But not that I would have made it, even if I was trying. So, yeah, but he's a smart dude. And so okay, I'm just going to be real here. I would probably like if he was to get a couple more Ivy League offers, here soon. They're basically FCS, and so they're hitting that playoffs pretty soon here. And I know as of now, November 23rd, I think of this Sunday is actually when coaches and whatnot could start contacting players and see them in person, actually. And so maybe a lot changes between now and like a month from now. Well, a lot should change between now and a month from now. So there you go there. Honestly, I think he is somebody that can succeed on that level. I think he's an Ivy League type of guy. And honestly, if you can get an opportunity to play football on that level, that's big. And I'm not sure if Ivy League offers scholarships for that stuff. I assume they do, but I don't know. I thought I saw something about Harvard not being able to, but maybe that was just for their basketball program, and I'm just tripping. But I mean, if an Ivy League comes knocking and they're like, hey, how about you come play for us? And, obviously, we'll see if he could get into the school and whatnot, which I think he can, then that's big. I'd rather take an Ivy League offer than a Colorado School of Mines offer. But also, if he does just want to do football, I think he's somebody who could potentially be a D1 guy right now. I think as it stands, he's probably closer to a D2, like a little bit more on Blake Haggerty's level, but a better athlete, I would say. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from with all of that. And, if he wants to go JUCO, that's fine. I'm sure, he could get his community college stuff paid for with the kind of grades he has. But honestly, I think he will be one of those guys that will potentially gain some offers down the stretch here near kind of closer to commitment day than anything. So, or signing day than anything. So just keep an eye out for that. But I think right now he's probably D2 guy with D1 potential. FCS or FBS, in my opinion, he just needs a little bit more development. So yeah. But I'm
gonna have to agree. And I think that does it for Nick Stone, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
All right.
That does.
So we are now past the halfway point, and coming up next, we'll talk about the number 2 receiver in the senior class of Colorado.
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. We're going to go ahead and talk about our number 2 receiver here in the class of 2022. And we did kind of go back and forth on this one, but I think we're pretty sold on him right here, though. I mean, he's a very good receiver, and that is Jackson Brush out of Legend High School. He is 5'10", 165 pounds. That's the heaviest I found, Kodey. I don't know if you found heavier or if I'm just spreading false news. So
nope, 165. That's the heaviest I found.
So there you go. But he has had some signature games here that kind of separated him from others. And obviously he's a talent. I'm gonna talk about his stats first, actually. So on the year, he had 46 receptions, 779 receiving yards, 11 receiving touchdowns, and this is as of November 23rd. And so obviously if they go deeper into the playoffs / if he has a monster game in this next playoff game, those stats change. So there you go. But his notable games was against Pine Creek. Very good defense. They won 26-23 in that one. He had 5 receptions, 113 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And then against Regis Jesuit, who also has a pretty good defense just in general. They won that one 42-41 in another close one. He had 5 receptions, 189 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. So he's a guy who could produce. We know that, statistically. But let me talk about his game. And honestly, I think the thing that is really a staple of Jackson Brush's game here is that he's just a very good route runner. One of the better ones that we've seen today. Obviously, I think I'd still have Chase Penry up there, but Jackson Brush is right next to him at number 2 because he is just a very crisp route runner. Part of that is because he has extremely quick feet and his breakdowns really throw corners off, and he sells his routes extremely well. But, that is probably his best quality. This allows him to get open in a bunch of different ways. If you're just looking at his film, there are a bunch of different moves he puts on corners and defenders, and he just finds a way to run those routes super well. And so that's definitely something that we gotta give him credit for, because that's something that we've criticized a lot of other guys on this list, and obviously evaluating other people's film, that was a big thing as well. And so easily probably the best route runner in the state right now. Yeah, actually, period, probably, to be honest with you. Another thing that I really like about Jackson Brush, is his run after the catch ability. This is probably the next staple, or the other staple in his game. He is very quick. He can make a lot of guys miss. He has a bag, and he's just your classic quick receiver that can make a lot of things happen between, the point he catches the ball And then the point where he's getting tackled, he can make a lot happen, make a lot of dudes miss. He's somebody that helps out quarterbacks a lot because you could throw a hitch or a slant or whatever, and he'll do his thing from there. So that's the biggest thing, or one of the biggest things that I really like about his game. And then lastly, he has very solid hands. He shows it from time to time because there are some high passes here and there where he just goes up and gets the ball if needed. And, he's only 5'10", 165, but he could definitely get up there and make plays, be a playmaker, and we love to see that. And so Jackson Brush, I mean, he's just a very good athlete, with a bag, with excellent route running, with good athleticism, obviously, between his agility and his speed. He can make it happen. So there you go there. Kodey, do you have anything else you want to add on before you talk about areas of improvements?
I just want to continue to enunciate that his separation on routes is the best in this senior class. Absolutely. He runs really crisp routes and he gets really good cuts that lead to just lots of separation. I have to talk about the one play on his film. I think it's the second or third play in where he runs a double move and the cornerback literally falls down. Literally snatched his ankles and ended up scoring a touchdown on an easy catch. So I also think that, he goes up for some passes and he has strong hands and he's able to withstand some hits. He gets nailed quite a bit in his highlight reel. Obviously, his frame might have something to do with that too, but he gets rocked and he holds on to the ball, which is all you can ask of a receiver. And that's exactly what I would want in a receiver that, I'm either recruiting, and it's especially one that I'd want from one that I'm coaching, is like, make the catch no matter what. You could run an ugly route, which he doesn't. You could not have a lot of separation, which he always gets. And you could get rocked. And all I care about is that you caught the ball. Well, and your safety, of course. But you know what I mean as far as on a football play analysis perspective. And so I think that, on top of, these cuts that lead to lots of separation on routes, he utilizes the exact same footwork to beat press constantly. And, this footwork and body control allows for a variety of ball carrier moves. He has a pretty solid spin move, all things considered, whenever he's out in the open field. He has some quick cuts. He can make some big jukes to avoid defenders here. And I think that he runs a really solid route variety, maybe the most in the state as well, being, that he runs routes so well. That opens up a lot more of the playbook. And, this Legend offense is one of the best, if not the best, in the state. So that obviously is conducive to his production and his numbers here out in Parker. But talking about some areas of improvement that I would have, obviously, Simon, you kind of addressed the frame a little bit, but I'll stay away from that in case you want to touch up on it again. But, while he is a very shifty receiver, sometimes he dances just way too much and should just take what the defense gives him north to south. He just dances around too much and he'll end up like losing yard or not being able to gain yards because he's going too like back and forth instead of just get up the field, And I think you can kind of apply that as well to his just ball carrier vision. He has the moves, but he doesn't really have the vision, and you could see this because, his wide receiver screens, he routinely picks up yards. But I think, if he just shows a little bit more patience and, he kind of uses his blockers rather than, they're kind of coincidentally there blocking for him. If he uses his blockers and follows them, then he probably has a couple more touchdowns on this year. I got to be honest, probably 2 more touchdowns that he left on the field, just not waiting for, his linemen to pick up the block and instead running past them and then getting tackled. You know what I mean? When he had the time. And so in turn, obviously, spatial awareness of other players is something that, you could potentially work on, and that'll just come with time and more snaps, which is not the worst thing ever. Simon, do you have any other areas of improvement before you kind of, place a level of recruitment on Jackson Brush, and then I can fill you in on where he actually is at?
Yeah. Not too much. I think his top end speed is definitely a little bit of a problem. Well, was it listed at a 4.5 or 4.6, Kodey? I can't remember. His 40
He
yard
has
dash.
a 4.6 40-yard
Yeah,
dash.
it definitely shows, because he's very quick. I mean, that's not like you can't take that for granted. And so if you're gonna not have the greatest 40-yard dash, having elite quickness, which I feel like he does, is gonna be huge. And so, maybe that's the only other thing. I don't know. I mean, he could work on his explosiveness training and whatnot, but I think he's probably capped around 4.5, 4.6. I don't think he's a 4.4 guy. So, just there you go. There, at least, I mean, it's gonna take some work to get to 4.4. But it's not always about that. I think right now he's just fine at where he's at. That's probably the only other gripe. I mean, there's his frame as well, but he can't control that he's 5'10". Maybe if he puts on a couple more pounds, I would feel a little bit better about him. If he could get to the 175, 180 range, I think that's totally fine. If he's 175, 180, and he maintains his speed and his agility and all that, like, screw it. Like, it's fine, but that's really the only things there. So I don't know about his offers right now, but personally, I think he's probably a D1 guy. Depending on the FBS school, I could see him in there, but I would probably say he's more of an FCS type of guy. I mean, his frame is the thing that's holding him back. If he was like 6'2", 6'3", or even 6'1", I would say like that would be a pretty big game changer for sure, but he's not. And so I think he is an FCS guy. He's somebody that does work inside and outside in the slot, outside receiver as well, which adds value because of his versatility. You know what he can do. And, there are some 5'10", 5'11" receivers that are still big playmakers out there, not just in college, but in the NFL. And so I think he's still really valuable. Mostly because of his route running and his after the catch ability. Those are the things that really stand him out from not just players in Colorado, but in the entire country. But Kodey, do you want to talk about some potential offers or looks he might be getting so far?
Yeah, so he's definitely under-recruited. I got to agree with you that he's an FCS level talent. Currently, his biggest interest is from New Mexico Highland University. They've made a lot of edits and official offers to him. I believe his first offer, that was in July. So that was kind of a long time ago. And just recently, this was yesterday or 2 days ago from when we recorded this on 11/23, he got an official offer to Lion football, Lion College. And so both of these are obviously not FCS looks, but I think with some more time that he does get more looks just because of how dominant he has been. He plays way bigger than his frame implies, at least height-wise, with the athleticism and his ability to kind of climb an invisible staircase to make some catches. He plays like he's 6 foot. Like, I genuinely thought he was a 6 foot guy until I saw him get hit one time. And I was like, oh, kind of looks pretty light. But, like Simon said, he can get up to 170. You can live with that and still be pretty dominant. Just getting in that weight room, getting stronger too, and just being more stout would be beneficial to his college career. But he is definitely, he's an FCS player in my opinion. I think that, he's a way better route runner than the likes of Jack Pierce, who's an FCS guy. And, just his ability to create separation in a variety of ways makes him an asset for any school.
Yeah, pretty much. Shout out to my boy Chris Reese over at Lyon College. He's going to graduate this year, so they're not going to play on the same team if he does commit to them. But shout out to my boy Chris Reese from P-Town. So, anyways, I'd have to agree. There's nothing wrong with going FCS. Cooper Kupp was an FCS guy. Obviously he's like 6'2", 6'3", and he played for Eastern Washington.
Just want to plug your fantasy team MVP, bro.
Well, even without Cooper Kupp, let's face it, I was gonna win our dynasty league anyways.
But we don't know that.
We're not gonna talk about that. It's not a fantasy podcast yet. So, Jackson Brush.
I would have Jackson Brush on my fantasy football team.
All right, sell out. Well, not sell out, but
wow.
But Jackson Brush, he's good. I think Oh man, I just think he's an FCS guy. I think UNC should offer him low key. He's just one of those shifty. I mean, he probably fits the stereotype. I'm not even gonna lie, but he's just one of those shifty, like good route running type of receivers that could do a lot for your team. He'll move the sticks. He'll move the sticks, which is all you could ask for.
And he has sure hands.
Yeah, and he has sure hands, and he's gonna run the right route. He's gonna get separation. He's gonna make it easier for quarterbacks to find him, and so I think he could be a lot of quarterbacks' best friends, low key, on this next level here. I think it's a matter of time. If he does go JUCO, that's fine. I mean, it's always fine to go JUCO, to be honest with you. It's never a bad thing. But I think right now he is an FCS guy and could play right now on an FCS team. So there you go. I mean, probably after a red shirt, put on some weight. But after that, I think he could contribute for an FCS team, especially for those teams that are more like, spread air raid types that need multiple receivers to do something after the catch. I think he could fit in extremely well there and be valuable just because of his abilities. So yeah. I mean, that's all I got to say about Jackson Brush. Do you have anything else to add?
No, we'll just be coming right back with our number one receiver of the class of 2022 coming up next. Hey, y'all, and welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. We are talking about the top 5 receivers of the class of 2022, so our senior receivers. And just as a quick review, we started off at number 5 with Blake Haggerty out of Castleview High School. Number 4 was Jack Pierce out of Cherokee Trail High School. Number 3 was Nick Stone out of Mountain Vista High School. And number 2 was Jackson Brush out of Legend High School. And so obviously whenever doing these lists, you end up with some names that just don't quite make the cut. And here are some honorable mentions here. Anthony Harris Jr., that's obviously a pretty big guy who gets missed on this list just because of opportunities, really. He is like double or triple covered on every play. So it's really hard to get good film of him on, his highest plane of potential. Josh Dunn is another guy who just narrowly misses this list, a very physical receiver who I had a lot of fun watching his film. Then speaking of, up north, you're missing the tandem of Jack Mole and Caleb Johnson out of Longmont, who had incredibly impressive statistical seasons, as well as Chase Tompkins out of Thunder Ridge is another guy who just misses out. Another northern guy, Keaton Kaiser, he's a very good receiver out there at Roosevelt. On the 2A level, the only guy who really got on our radar is Jaden Hedelius out of Berthoud. He's an incredible athlete who was fun to watch his film. And then a couple of other guys here on the 5A level who just missed. We just didn't quite get Kai O'Day Jr. in here. He has incredible speed, but some concerns with his hands and the way he bobbles a lot of passes were, kind of a red flag for us, and so he just misses there. Ben Anderson, the senior receiver out of Fairview High School, he put on a really good, impressive highlight reel, and, he was a part of Beckham Kritza's historical season as one of the best freshman quarterbacks in recent memory. So, shout out to him and that entire receiving corps. And the last honorable mention here is Bryson Torrey out of Vista Peak Prep, who just narrowly misses this list. But, he'll see a familiar face here at number 1. Isn't that right, Simon?
Yeah. Now, number 1. The number 1 receiver in the class of 2022 here in the state of Colorado is his teammate, Jordan Mayfield, the 6'2", 185-pound receiver out of Vista Peak Prep. I'm going to talk about his stats first, obviously. But on the season, he had 740 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns on 35 receptions. So there you go. Low key, actually, I'm just looking at this right now. That might be the lowest amount of receptions anybody has brought in. Yeah, it is. But he has pretty good stats that are pretty similar to a lot of these guys. So that should tell you all you need to know. But Jordan Mayfield, I mean, he's a beast. I got to see him live against Ponderosa. And Ponderosa, they did win that one 21-0, but I feel like it was a lot closer of a game than it was. In that game, and I'm reading off the stats that they put down in that game, but he had 7 receptions for 116 receiving yards. That is minus like 3 50-plus yard plays he had, where I think he took one off the slant for like 50-plus yards. The other one, he just mossed the safety and he killed him for that catch, basically. And then the other one was another big play off of a slant that he just took to the house. That was all called back. All 3 of them were called back. And so, with that being said, still 7 receptions, 116 receiving yards. That could have got more out of hand, and that game would have been a lot more crazy if it wasn't for the refs, to be honest with you. And then another big notable game he had was against Antares. They won that one 44-12 pretty handily, but that's his best statistical game, I want to say. He had 7 receptions for 163 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. Now, the thing with Jordan Mayfield is that he's probably the most explosive athlete on this entire list. He's just a beast. When he gets the ball in his hands, he is a playmaker with the ability to take it to the house pretty much every single time. You watch this kid play. His acceleration, first off, is insane. And that's probably partially, because he is a track and field athlete and a pretty good one at that, so you got to give him credit there. But his top end speed, obviously it's very good, but his acceleration is something else. Like, he goes 0 to 100 real quick, and doesn't give defenders a lot of time to get their hands on him, which is why he was able to take 2 slant routes, like almost 60 yards, and one of them to the house in that Ponderosa game against a team that's they're not a bad, football team at all. They made the playoffs. They made the second round. So there you go there. Obviously, extremely good after the catch. But he's somebody who has both finesse moves and power moves. His feet, he has very good footwork, and his agility is elite for sure. He's somebody that could shake a lot of guys. But, at 6'2", 185, he's also somebody that's not afraid to throw down his shoulder and run somebody over. He has done that and then ran for a couple more yards after that. He runs kind of like a running back almost, with the lower center of gravity, very physical there. But obviously with the acceleration and all that athleticism, he just has a lot in his bag, after the catch. And then finally, he just has excellent hands with a great catch radius. Like I said, look at that Ponderosa game. Well, look at his highlight reel, because it's one of the first games there. But in that Ponderosa game, man, he adjusted for that ball insanely and just skied. And, he came down with it when all was said and done. And he does this a lot. He mosses a lot of corners and defenders when he gets the chance, which is a pretty big if, because nothing against his quarterback. He's all right, but definitely costed him a couple throws here and there. I'm just going to be honest there, Mayfield, he definitely bailed him out, along with his teammate Bryson Torrey, who is a good receiver as well. But Mayfield, in my opinion, might be the better one out of the two, just because of his raw athleticism. This dude is an absolute beast. When the ball's in his hands, he could score. At the very least, he's going to get the first down, but he can definitely score. And then when he's vertical, I don't know. He's going to come down with it. That, because he's an athletic freak. And he's doing all of this at 6'2", 185. He is the biggest receiver by far on this list. Well, that made this list, and it shows, he's a legitimately, playing at this size and more, which is absolutely insane. Kodey, is there anything else you want to add on before you talk about areas of improvements?
This guy has the catch radius of a 6'4" or 5 wide receiver at 6'2", because of just how athletic he is. And, he's really shifty. Once he gets the ball in his hands, he's going to be really hard to catch and bring down between his combination of speed and just the footwork and athleticism that he has. He's so hard to catch and to bring down. He breaks ankles before and after the route, or before and after the catch. So he has that going for him. Obviously, that's something that helps you become the top wide receiver. But I think that, his instincts are something that pops off the film, because there's a lot of times where the pocket breaks down, and I compared this quarterback at Vista Peak to kind of Roethlisberger, as in modern day Roethlisberger, where he's not really as accurate, but he'll push it down the field. What do you say?
I said this season's Roethlisberger.
Yeah. Where he'll get it in the general vicinity, but he's not like a pinpoint guy really. He just has a strong arm, and Jordan Mayfield makes it work. I mean, as best as anyone can. And that starts with, he is really good at, pacing the field at the right speed, not full speed, because otherwise he would close the entire distance from left to right, east to west very soon. But he does a great job of pacing the field and working with the quarterback and finding ways to get open as the quarterback breaks the pocket. And from there, whether it's making a catch on the boundary and showing great field awareness after doing improv, or whether it's catching the ball and turning up field and making 2-3 guys miss all with one move. I mean, he has kind of the best of a lot of these worlds as far as, he's a great athlete and has incredible speed like Jack Pierce does. He has the body control and acrobatic catchability and huge catch radius that Blake Haggerty does. And he has that speed and getting upfield ability that Nick Stone does. He has a little bit of all of these receivers in him. And, the shiftiness after the catch that Jackson Brush has. He just has all of these receiver strengths in a frame that is bigger and, just as fast as most of these guys, with a 4.5 40-yard dash time. So there's just a lot to like there. And as far as areas of improvement, I think that he could be a more refined route runner. Just in general, he does round his routes, or he'll drift. Mostly on drag or in routes, you'll see him kind of fall off of his line a little bit. But, I mean, you could attribute that to his system, or like PTSD of like having to drift off of routes to make catches sometimes. So we just don't know what his maximum potential could even be with the right system and quarterback in place, honestly. Simon, do you have anything else to add on to areas of improvement?
Not too much. I agree with the route running. It could definitely be a little bit more crisp. It could be like Jackson Brush, but obviously not everyone could be like Jackson Brush or Chase Penry. And so that's pretty much one of the only things I would say does not run the widest variety of routes, although he does work inside and out. Most of his big plays do come off of some pretty basic like slant hitch, like go routes, post routes, which is fine, but I mean, that's probably also because this Vista Peak team, like, they have a lot of skilled talent, I would say, but up front they're a little bit suspect. I'm not even gonna lie. And then at quarterback, he's been on and off. He's been hot and cold depending on the day. And so that kind of limits you as is. For all I know, maybe he's running all these routes. He's just not getting those looks on those routes, which would be a big deal. But no, that's pretty much it. Do we want to talk outlook here?
Yeah, sure thing, because he currently doesn't have any listed offers on his Twitter. So that's blasphemous, obviously, when you're the number one receiver at your position in a state, especially in this state that has, a couple of D1 guys. I'm very surprised to not see that many offers coming his way, being the explosive athlete that he is. And, if he couldn't get any looks at wide receiver for some reason, he's also a great safety. So what's going on here, Simon, and what are schools missing out on, and what level do you think schools should be looking at this guy?
Well, like I said, or like we said, it is also November 23rd, so maybe he doesn't have them right now, but it's hard to believe that he won't get those looks eventually, because in my opinion, he's a D1 guy, not FCS, but I think he could be an FBS type of receiver and be just one of those dudes, just looking at his body type, looking at his athleticism, his pure athleticism, like he's there. Like he is a D1 FBS guy through and through. If he was playing for, if he was playing for some different teams out here, like Denver South is one that we mentioned. Well, is that one that we talked about earlier before we recorded this episode? You know, if he was for them, that could maybe make the difference. But honestly, if he played for Fairview or Cherry Creek or even Valor, you know, or Arapahoe, potentially, like one of those Centennial League schools, it would be different. It'd be a different story, you know, but because it's Vista Peak, they did make the playoffs. Wait, yeah, they made the playoffs, right?
Yeah, they lost in the opening round to Pueblo West, I want to say.
Oh, okay. There you go. So they lost to a solid Pueblo West team. You know, I mean, I don't know. Just on paper, I mean, when you look at it, it's like, okay, you know, I mean, he's not, that just doesn't stand out, you know. And that starts with the team first, and then you go from there. But honestly, I think he will get these looks by the time this episode comes out. Hopefully he has some of those looks and offers, because he is just a D1 guy. He's a beast and all that. And if he goes JUCO, fine, he'll drop 1,000 yards and, you know, 15 plus touchdowns wherever he goes. Because I mean, like I said, just look at his stats here. Only 35 receptions on the year, but he has 740 receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. You know, those receiving yards is close to Jackson Rush, who has like 15 more receptions than him. It's close to, I mean, that 750 receiving yards is only 100 less than Nick Stone, who has 20 plus receptions on him. And then obviously with Jack Pierce, I mean, he doesn't scale well against that, but I mean, he's only 400 receptions off, 400 receiving yards off. And Jack Pierce has 70 more receptions, at least 70 more than him. And so, I mean, the stats also help him out as well. It shows that he's an explosive dude, you know, and so I think he's a D1 guy, FBS, FCS for sure. If he has to go the JUCO route, I'm not worried about him. I think he's somebody who stands out pretty much right away, you know, and in his first or second year, he goes ahead and he kills it on the JUCO level, you know, and he gets some of those D1 offers. I'm not worried about it. I just know that he's an FBS guy. I've looked at his film and I'm like, I mean, you know, you got the frame, check. You got the athleticism, speed, acceleration, agility, strength, check, and check. I mean, you have the hands, which is a huge check. You know, I mean, I don't know what else you want from him other than being a perfect receiver, you know, which you don't find many of those. So it's kind of just where I'm at. But I think he's an FBS guy. Kodey, what do you think about that? And what do you think about him potentially going JUCO?
I mean, if he's not getting Division I looks, I feel like you have to go JUCO here to get the proper looks. I mean, obviously, if you get a full ride offer anywhere, we never discourage taking a serious look at that. But schools are missing out. This is a phenomenal athlete who's going to be able to ball on any level of football. And, you know, I think that he's just missing more targets. I mean, literally, if you double his receptions this year, then his productivity pops off the page for any year that we've looked at receivers and for any class, you know what I mean? So he just needs more looks and more targets. If that has to come on the JUCO level, then that has to come on the JUCO level, and it's very attainable, I think, for a guy of his athleticism. It also gives you some time to, you know, I don't know what his GPA is, but it gives you some time to adjust to, you know, that college school system and, you know, get some credits for a cheaper price too as well. But, you know, UNC, if you're looking for wide receivers who are athletic freaks and big play threats, Jordan Mayfield is literally right here. CSU, Wyoming. I mean, I could see him potentially getting looks from Wyoming here in the next few weeks. I don't see why he wouldn't. Oh, hey, what do you know? He is followed by Wyoming football recruiting. Don't know how I didn't follow that. And, you know, he's also followed by glove work as well. So shout out to Gabe Cardenas there for helping produce some pretty good wide receivers this year and in the years to come. But other than that, I don't really have anything else to add on. I just think that he's under-recruited and does deserve a Division I opportunity, regardless if it's at the FCS or FBS level. But I think he can succeed on that FBS level. Just depends on when he gets that opportunity. But he could also be a great fit at Boise State, honestly. He kind of fits the bill of the athletes that they have over there, and could be a big play guy on special teams as well. So get this guy offers. You're missing out if you're a recruiter and he's not on your board. But
yeah, no, for sure. He's going to be a steal. It's who's going to pull the trigger first, who's going to find him first, because
Playmakers Corner did.
Yeah, we did. Hire us as your recruiting directors. We'll give you a championship team.
For real.
Yeah.
And
see. But anyways,
that at Northern Colorado or Chapel Hill. I'll work at Chapel Hill. But anyways, the best way to reach us too, if you want to hire us for those positions, is on social media. You can find us on Instagram at Playmakers Corner, on Twitter at Playmaker Corner. We also post content to Facebook. If you just look up Playmakers Corner, you can DM us on there if you want, or if you just use Facebook as your preferred social media, we post all of our stuff on there. We also post content on TikTok, where we'll be having TikToks of all of these players as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that, obviously. And for any future episodes, you can go ahead and follow us on Apple Podcasts, or give us a like or follow on Anchor or Spotify Podcasts, as well as Google Podcasts, so you get notifications for all of our new episodes that we post. We're doing about 2 a week, and we have more top fives coming out for you. It's going to be some big decisions here, as we still have exterior offensive linemen, as well as running back, quarterback, and edge rushers. Not in that order, but still lots of exciting Colorado talent to take a look at. If you missed our other top 5 episodes, go ahead and check those out, where we did, at this point, interior offensive linemen, cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers, and the works there, tight end as well. There's a lot of talent here in Colorado. It goes overlooked, so be sure to check out our lists. And if you don't make it onto one of these lists and you want your film broken down, we may have already broken it down. Or if you want a more in-depth look, just request with, reaching out to us on social media and filling out, or, telling us name, position, height, weight, school, and your film if you have it. I don't really think there's anything else to add on. Simon, am I missing anything on the outro, or are we about to say goodbye to the listeners for this episode?
Remember, we're gonna, by this time, we should have our polls up for our end of the year award shows for 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A. I don't know what order we're going in. I assume it's gonna be 1A through 5A though. That would probably make the most sense. And maybe it's already done. But remember, go ahead and look at our Twitter and whatnot. I assume that's where we're gonna have our polls and whatnot. Those will be lasting a week. And so no excuses, Plus we know some of y'all are going to start going on break. And so yeah, there you go. Plus it doesn't take that long to vote on Twitter. But go ahead, Kodey.
We goofed. We didn't get it at the beginning of the episode. But if you're on this top 5 list or any of our top 5 lists, that's an automatic invite for an interview where you can explain yourself, explain your game, talk about your game with us, your football career, as well as where it might be heading.
No, I said that.
At the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying it again at the end, and I'm throwing you under the bus for no reason.
Okay, well.
That's kind of our dynamic. But anyways.
I've been your co-host, Simon Voyanos, a.k.a. Coach V.
And I'm the other co-host, Kodey Stauffer, and thank you for listening to this episode of Playmakers Corner.
Peace.